Well, first of all, thank you for being here in the debate, Duluth Playhouse. I'm Ray Skip Sandman. I'm a resident of Duluth. I've been here for 25 years. I'm a Vietnam vet, a tribal elder. And my opening remarks is that, as all of you know, that I oppose the polymet mine up there, that the copper sulfide mining. I'm for women's equal rights, debt reduction for the students and student loans, and we'll go from there.
Thank you very much, Congressman.
I'd like to begin by thanking the Duluth Chamber and the Tribune for getting us all together and giving everybody a chance to see the candidates and where they stand on the various issues. The choice, in my judgment, in this election contest really could not be more clear. The fact is, and it's undisputable, the rich are getting richer in this country, and the poor are getting poorer, and the middle class is getting crushed. And with that, the American dream is getting crushed. And the American dream is not all about everybody making a super million or a super billion, although there's nothing wrong with that. The American dream is all about having a secure job with a living wage, being able to provide health care for your family, to be comfortable that you'll be able to be secure in your retirement years, to be able to send your kids to a good, affordable school and get a good education, to belong to a union, and to have some money at the end of the week when you're done paying your bills, to do a little recreation or go to dinner with your family and friends. My dad once told me when I first went into public life, he said, "Son, if you just do a couple things, I'll always be proud of you. One is be honest, tell the truth. Number two," he said, "work for the working men and women in this country." He said, "Be their champion. Don't worry too much about the rich and the powerful. They do a good job of taking care of themselves." This election contest, I submit, is a question of who are you for? Our primary opponent here in this contest, Mr. Mills, has made it clear who he's for. He has said he wants more tax cuts for supermillionaires and billionaires, and yet at the same time, he opposes an increase in the minimum wage. The choice could not be more clear. If you know who you're for, you'll know who to vote for in this election contest. I thank you for the opportunity. We're going to have a spirited debate, and I assure you and promise you it will be civil. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Mills.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm somebody who never thought ever about running for public office. I'm the vice president of our family's company, Mills Fleet Farm. My dad and my uncle started it in 1955. It's hard work, sweat of the brow, reinvesting back in our business. As a little kid, I grew up working the business, cleaning toilets, sweeping floors, washing cars. Had just about every job there, and my current job right now is vice president. And one of the things, one of the many hats you wear in a family business is, well, I should say in a family business, you wear many hats. And one of those many hats I wear as vice president is looking out for our 6,000 employees. And one of those hats is plan administrator of our company's self-insured health plan. I have seen firsthand how Obamacare has affected negatively our employees and their families. And not only that, I have seen all throughout our part of Minnesota how people have been negatively impacted by it. Higher premiums, higher co-pays, higher deductibles, skinnier networks. They're paying more, they're getting less. Congressman Nolan, well, he wants a single payer model, government run. Every time government has tried to assume the control or the production of a product, good, or service, every time costs have gone up and quality has gone down. There's never been an exception to that, and anybody who's ever studied economics knows that. Also, I got outspoken about Second Amendment issues. Congressman Nolan gets back to Congress and he wants to ban semi-automatic rifles, the ones he thinks that look scary, and have the government tell us how many bullets we can have in our gun. That earned him a failing grade, an F rating from the National Rifle Association. In our family, we have something called the hunting camp doctrine. If at hunting camp you complain about something, you get the job to fix it. So that's why I'm here today, underneath the hunting camp doctrine. I've been complaining about it, so I'm off the bench, putting skin in the game, and I'm going to go to Washington And you know what? There's a lot of things that we have to stand up for our part of Minnesota. And Congressman Nolan is wrong on so many of those issues. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. You've touched on some of the issues we're going to get to, but we're going to begin this debate, this candidate forum, by talking a little bit about some of the accusations that are out there, some of the ugly charges that are out there, some of the maybe negative stereotypes, and I'd like you to address those. Congressman Nolan, this isn't necessarily me talking, but they say you're as far left as the Tea Partiers are right. You're a has-been, an enemy of the Second Amendment, and you don't even know how to hold a gun safely. Sir, how do you respond to critics who say you've been wrong for the 8th District?
Well, I'm not sure where to begin. There have been so many charges. And,
so many insults, I know.
Yeah. There's 191 members of the Democratic caucus, and about 100 of them are judged to be considerably more liberal than I am. So the fact is, I'm a moderate. And I do have a right-wing Tea Party on my, I guess he's on your right, okay? He's on my left. And I guess I got someone probably a little more to the left to me on my right, or your left. But I'm just not sure where to go here. But let's just take the F rating from the NRA. The NRA is primarily financed by gun manufacturers and gun salespeople, like yourself, Stewart. They're interested in primarily trying to sell guns. And that's all right. I mean, they've got a right to do that. But it's never been more clear that someone like myself supports the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms. Some of my most joyful moments and memorable moments in life have been with a gun in my hand. I'm with my dad last weekend. My wife Mary and I are out duck hunting with our grandson. You know, my wife and I were married 30 years ago. First present I bought for her on her birthday, her first birthday, was a 20-gauge shotgun. And I don't mind telling you, she was thrilled to have it, but she did look a little disappointed. You know, I think she was kind of hoping for something a little more romantic. So on her second birthday, I bought her a 30-06 with a scope on it. Stewart, I've been buying my guns and ammunition, and my family and I have from your dad and your granddaddy's store all of our life. And the fact is, I support the Second Amendment for hunting, for personal protection, for sport shooting. It's a fundamental basic right. But that doesn't mean we can't have some gun safety like background checks. I mean, do you support selling guns to people who have been found to be criminally insane or terrorist or
Congressman,
convicted felons?
We'll get to the gun issue in just a bit. Your time is up, I'm sorry to say. Mr. Mills, the knock against you, millionaire partier, doesn't know how the challenges faced by most Americans. You support tax breaks for the rich at the expense of the middle class. How do you respond to critics who say you won't work for 8th District?
Well, I've worked hard all my life, and in our business, we didn't have a choice. It was something we did at a very young age. My father grew up during the Great Depression, and work was not only a necessity but a virtue. I know how to work hard, but I've also had a very joyful life. But you know, we live in a work hard, play hard part of Minnesota. And you know, if they want to pick on my hair, well, it shows that they don't want to talk about the issues. And there are things that are facing our part of Minnesota. And the issues are, it's health care, it's Obamacare, it's our Second Amendment rights, which we'll talk about later. It's the fact that Rick Nolan voted for a job-killing carbon tax, a tax on energy that would absolutely strangle our part of Minnesota economically. And it's also about the fact, and I'm endorsed by the Farm Bureau, it's about the fact that Representative Nolan voted in favor of the waters, the EPA's waters, the U.S. rule. You know, I'd love to talk about this issues, not about my hair and the fact that my family, myself included, because a family business isn't about one person or one generation, it's about the entire family, and even family farms. That applies to family farms as well. We work hard, we reinvest back in our businesses, and that grows jobs and sustains the jobs that we have. But you know what? They want to attack a business. Again, we're not publicly traded. There's no venture capital money. There's no private equity money. It's a family business like any other. And if they want to attack me and my family for the success and the jobs that we've created, well, then that's their message. Their message is picking on my hair.
I forgot to ask about your hair. Thank you for bringing it up. Mr. Sandman, you have even longer hair.
Yes, I do.
I think, what do you say to critics who accuse you of just being a one-issue candidate? It's all environment, anti-mining, and then that's about it.
Well, it's a very big issue, and critics will call me a lot of different things. But I look, if we don't have water, we don't have life. When I was a veteran in service, I had to stand up in front of a bunch of people, and I had to raise my hand. And I took that oath to protect this country from foreign and domestic. That means a lot to me because I was never released from that oath. Therefore, I see what's happening up there and proposed what's going to happen up there on the Iron Range as a direct attack on America. They'll come in, they'll do their processing and extracting, but then when that's done, they pack up and leave. They don't care about the people, they don't care about the mining, they don't care about the environment. We do not have the science to clean up a spill. If you look at history of that type of mining, throughout the world, there's never been a safe one. And for the life of me, I cannot understand how 200 to 500 jobs are worth our future. Once that stuff gets into the water, there's no guarantee. It'll destroy our tourism, which brings in northern Minnesota about $200 to $800 million per year. How many jobs will be lost when it leaks? How many? Doesn't matter which party you are, but we have to do the right thing. Both my opponents here say something completely different. Short term. I don't. I look for a long term. We need that here in northern Minnesota. We need someone looking after our children and after our future generations. It may not happen in our time, but 20, 30 years down the road, it will.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sandman. We'll get back to the mining issue in a minute. In the meantime, I'm going to offer each of the candidates a chance for a 1-minute rebuttal, up to 1 minute if they want it, on these negative type stereotypes and their responses to it. Congressman Nolan, would you like 1 minute?
Yeah, I would. Mr. Mills says there's never been a federal government program that worked. Stewart, I submit you might want to take a look at Social Security. You might want to take a look at Medicare, and I know your party platform calls for privatizing and abolishing both of them. Most people would agree they work quite well. With regard to clean air, clean water, I remember when they had to haul clean water, drinking water into Duluth because the water was so polluted. I remember when the lakes and rivers were so polluted that they were catching on fire and an acid rain was destroying our forests and lakes. I don't apologize for supporting clean water and clean air. I've got as good an environmental record as you'll find of anyone in the country, and I don't apologize for that. And as for the ACA, my goodness, people with cancer and heart disease and Parkinson's are now able to get affordable insurance because of that. People are able to keep their kids on their insurance. People are protected from bankruptcy. Women are not charged more for the same policy that a man is charged for. You really oppose those things and want to repeal all those important advancements? Of course there's things that needed to be changed in the Affordable Care Act. It's done a lot of good for a lot of people. And I've heard you say that there are not many people who suffer those circumstances. Well, I'm here to tell you there are a lot of people who suffer those circumstances and are grateful for the Affordable Care Act.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Mr. Mills, 1 minute.
Yes, just to correct a couple things. First of all, I never said there aren't many people that have pre-existing conditions. What I said is that as plan administrator, there are few people that I've run across that are not covered by HIPAA which allows you to go from your existing plan to another plan without having to worry about pre-existing conditions. Also, I never said that there was a federal government program that never worked.
You just said it a minute ago.
Hold on, may I have some time, sir?
Sure.
What I said was, whenever government has taken over the production of a product, good, or service, costs have gone up and quality has gone down. I'm not talking about Social Security and Medicare. In the past, you have said that I wanted to abolish Social Security. It's absolutely not true. And you've also said that I wanted to turn Medicare into a voucher system. Not true. And I challenge you to substantiate those remarks without editing my words together out of context.
Well, thank you for the challenge. The Libertarian Party, to which you are...
Congressman, can we give Mr. Sandman a turn first, please?
Well, one of the things is that when you talk about affordable health care, we need to make it affordable. We need to make it affordable. That bill needs to be taken out, and we don't have to start from the bottom up again, but we need to pull the best parts out of there and make it affordable. If you're a single mother with 2 children or 3 children, you cannot afford what is being offered out there now. Especially if you have a low-paying job, minimum wage job, it needs to be what it says, affordable for everyone.
Very good, thank you, Roger.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Farmers in agribusiness frequently complain that North Dakota oil shipping is tying up the railroads, impacting delivery of crops to market. Discussion of that issue often leads to the question of pipelines. What is your position on safe transport of oil, the backlog of the commodities to market, and ultimately where do you stand on expansion of pipelines? Mr. Mills?
Well, certainly I support expansion of pipelines. Representative Nolan said that he supported the Keystone Pipeline, then he got to Washington and voted against a bill that would have made it that much more closer to that project going forward. He said he was for the Enbridge Sandpiper Pipeline, and then he said, well, but just not on this route. Well, if we change the route of the Enbridge Sandpiper Pipeline, what happens is you delay it by 4 to 5 years, and it costs an additional $500 million, effectively killing the project. When you take a look at the $25 million worth of tax revenue that would come into our part of Minnesota, that's $4 million a year alone for Aiken County, which sorely needs the tax revenue. And I'm endorsed by the Farm Bureau, and when I talk to those guys, you know, they have trouble getting their products to market. Because the rail cars are loaded with crude coming off of the Bakken. So you know what, we need to go forward with the Enbridge pipeline. If they can do it safely, we need to go forward with the Keystone Pipeline. Our economy depends on it. You cannot be for jobs and against the activities that create jobs.
Thank you. Mr. Sandman, your opinion, position on shipping oil and pipelines?
That's not a very hard decision for me, because where they're proposing to put that pipeline at, it runs underneath a lot of water, underneath a lot of wetlands. And if you watch the news, there's been all kinds of toxic spills out there. Is the science safe enough? I don't know. I don't think so. I know the president just the other day, or someone, I may be wrong, talked about getting new tankers. Why not split that? Some for grain, some for farm products, some for the oil. But definitely reevaluate those routes that they're talking about. I know we need oil, but at what cost? How is it benefiting us? Mr. Mills talks about some tax revenue coming through. Will that outweigh the spill if we have to clean it up? There's some real issues and some real thought to our environment that we need to think about and start doing about. I'm proactive rather than reactive. We need to sit down at the table with the people involved and bring all these issues and concerns of the people before we make a final decision on it. But where I stand right now, no. No on that pipeline. It's just like hydraulics. You try pushing more oil through it, eventually it's gonna pop somewhere. We need to look at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman.
Well, first of all, I've taken the time to study the consequences of rail versus highway versus pipelines. And to be sure, there are problems associated with each and every one of them, and none of them are perfect. But with regard to Sandpiper and with regard to Keystone, I do in fact support both of them. But Mr. Sandman's made a couple of good points here. And I would like to add to that. First of all, there's probably 40,000 miles of pipelines running through Minnesota right now. Every road's got a pipeline running down it, and they're everywhere. I am convinced in my mind that pipelines have to be a part of the mix. They do in fact have a lower carbon footprint. They do are less prone to danger and to accident, and if we use American steel in those pipelines, as I have proposed in my legislation, they will be even safer. But when you talk about Keystone, the Tea Party Republicans brought a bill before the House of Representatives that exempted Keystone, a foreign corporation, from having to comply with the EPA, from having to get Army Corps engineer permits for installation and for maintenance, for having to post financial assurances when those accidents inevitably occur. Would you have voted for a bill like that? No, I'm for the Keystone and I'm for Sandpiper, but I want it to be done right. We've proven that we have the technology and the know-how to do these things and to do it right if we have the political will. But we can't let foreign corporations come in here willy-nilly and have their way with us. And the same can be said of Sandpiper. Mr. Sandman has pointed out that some of that is going through some very fragile soils and waters. And we need Sandpiper. But we can alter the route a little bit to make sure that we protect our precious waters. And that's what I'm for. I'm for pipelines, but I'm for doing it the right way.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Mills, a rebuttal, if you will.
Well, I keep getting accused of being a Tea Partier, and I'm not sure that's entirely accurate, but nonetheless, the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers has been weaponized against projects such as Keystone. And you know what? After years and years of trying to get it done, and if these agencies aren't looking how it can be done, but trying to come up with every reason how it can be stopped, you know what? It's time to get the peoples to take control of their government, again, from the bureaucracies and the various agencies, so we can get projects like a Keystone going, so we can improve our balance of trade, our balance of payments, so we can become energy independent and then become a net exporter of energy. So whether it's Keystone, whether it's Polymet, enough is enough. We have to get on with it. This is jobs, it's our economy. This is the worst economic recovery in US history. And we have various government agencies and bureaucracies for no good reason. All the hoops have been jumped through, the I's have been dotted, the T's have been crossed. Let's get on with it. Let's reignite our economy.
Mr. Sandman, you care to respond?
Not at this time. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. Why endanger our wetlands for what it would bring to us? Does not offset. I always look of, Mr. Mills made the statement of Camp Doctor and leaving it better. I don't see that happening when it does break. We don't have that technology. We don't have the funding for it. I can't see them stepping forward and doing it. I really don't. We really need to take a look at this. This is dangerous. This is dangerous for the small-term benefit, for the long-term effects that will happen. It's not will it happen, but when it happens.
Thank you, Congressman. Any final thoughts on that?
Well, not to be repetitious, but you know, like I said, I grew up in a time when the lakes and rivers were so polluted they were catching on fire. The Mississippi River, where we live, boy, you get down there in the spring and there were toilet paper and condoms, and turds hanging on every branch, and that was the good stuff, you know. That wasn't the toxic stuff. And you had to haul drinking water into Duluth, and acid rain was destroying our forests and our lakes, and everybody said, well, you gotta have jobs or environment. You can't have both. Well, guess what? We went to work, we proved we have the brains, we have the technology to do both, and to do both, we must. Our waters are precious, our jobs are precious, our mining, our manufacturing is precious, rebuilding this middle class is precious, and with regard to the economics of that, you don't rebuild the middle class by giving more tax cuts to the super rich and billionaires and fighting against a minimum wage for people that have to work 2 and 3 jobs just to make a living. That's not rebuilding the middle class. That's not restoring the balance. And that's not restoring the American dream.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman, for the soundbite. Next issue. Perhaps the most polarizing issue in northern Minnesota, and of course we're in northern Minnesota, has been precious metals mining, the copper nickel mining. The people that say that the government is dragging their feet, the agencies are dragging their feet, it's taking too long, it's taken 9 years. Other folks that say it can't possibly be done safely. Gentlemen, where do you stand on copper nickel mining? Can it be done safely? Do you have any confidence in that at all? And Mr. Sandman, this is your big issue. We'll start with you, sir.
No, it cannot be done safely, not at this time, and even though we do not have the science for that. So I oppose that wholeheartedly because I know what it can do and what it will do. Just about a month ago, a mine up there in British Columbia broke and dumped 5 billion gallons of toxic waste into the river. Now it's the same technology that the mining is proposing to make a containment field for that polluted water. But where they're looking at putting that is already in a mine that is already leaking into the watershed. So I don't support that at all. But what I do support is the Northern Lights passenger train. I think my opponents will agree we need to get big money out of Congress. We need to stop giving subsidies to the corporations. We need to have the corporations start paying their darn taxes. Now we can redirect some of that funding into northern Minnesota so that we can go on with other projects that are less environmental deadly. And we talk about 200 to 300 jobs. Northern Lights, they were talking about the other day, 13,800 jobs for the 8th district. That's something to look at. They may be temporarily, but 3 or 4 years down the road, maybe something else will happen. We don't need that mine up there. So.
Thank you very, very much. Representative Nolan on precious metals mining, sir.
Well, first of all, I grew up on the Nolan Range, the Cayuga Range. Mining is a huge part of what we do and who we are. Our economy, it's been set up here, is based on timber, taconite, tourism. Nobody enjoys the great outdoors more than we do up here. Our water, our forests, our lakes, we treasure them. That's why we live here. But I reject the argument that because something has never been done before safely, that it can't be done. There was never an internal combustion engine. There was never a catalytic converter, or there was never a scrubber on a coal-fired power plant to scrub the sulfur out of them. We didn't have the scrubbers to take all the toxic waste out of our lakes and our rivers and our streams. I submit that we now have the technology. We now have the brain power. All we have to have is the resolve and the will to do it right. And, you know, on your right here, my opponent suggests we should do away with all these EPA regulations and onerous rules and regulations, which, by the way, have cleaned up our air and our water. And in little over 1 generation, increased life expectancy in America from about 47 to about 90, maybe one of the greatest achievements in the history of humanity. No, I submit that we must be compliant with good, sound environmental rules and regulations, and we have the technology to move ahead with mining, ferrous and non-ferrous mining. These are minerals that are badly needed. It's a huge part of our jobs, our economy, our culture, and we need to protect our environment just as well, because that too is a critical, essential part of our economy and our culture.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mills. Sounds like there might be some common ground here.
Well, not really. You know what? I'm for it. You know what? The PolyMet it's amazingly well thought out. The science, the engineering is there. After 9 years, there's no reason why we shouldn't be going forward with it. Obviously, Mr. Sandman is against it, and we're not quite sure where Representative Nolan is. In the last election cycle, he blasted Jeff Anderson and Representative Kervac for their support of the Strategic Minerals Act, and then went and voted for it. Nathan Ness in the Duluth News-Tribune had a scathing guest editorial which outlined Representative Nolan's flip-flops. Also, most recently in September in the Duluth News-Tribune, they were talking about how he's hedging his support of PolyMet. And the Daily Costs did a scathing editorial complete with a video outlining Representative Nolan's flip-flops. So he can say he's for it right now, but where is he going to be tomorrow? And you know, you can look at all this stuff is online. It's not really did not, did to. Just go look it up for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 minute, Mr. Sandman, if you'd like.
We don't have the science for a cleanup when it happens. Simple as that. I look at what's happening now without the mine being there. We have the metal mercuries that are in the water, in the fish already. 1 in 10 babies here in northern Minnesota show a higher elevation of that metal in their blood. Our babies, what will happen when this happens? It's not if, it's when. It's when it happens, we're the ones that are going to suffer. Our children are the ones that's going to suffer. Your grandchildren. It won't affect us right now. But you go down 2 generations, it will. And if their record is so great, why are all the accidents happening with this type of mining around the world? It is unsafe because we cannot take care of it when it happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman, 1 minute, please.
Well, I do support PolyMet. I have always supported PolyMet. I have always supported mining, and I have always supported doing it the right way in compliance with good, clean air, water, health, and safety standards. Now, obviously, you take issue with the standards and you take issue with the mining. My position has been consistent. It has been clear, and you can say that's being on both sides of the issue, and I would say, yeah, you're darn right it is. I am for mining, and I'm for doing it the right way. And with regard to the technology, Minnesota's been a leader in clean water technology. We make some of the best high-pressure pumps through companies like Water Engineering. We make some of the films that go into reverse osmosis. And with regard to wild rice, I've been picking wild rice all my life. I picked rice this year. And yeah, the rice where I wasn't very good either, Skip, but we got a few pounds. But you can take, and PolyMet has said, to give us your standard. You want 250 parts, 10 parts, 0 parts. We'll buy the pump, we'll buy the filtration, and we'll give you whatever standard you feel is important to protect the water and protect the rice. We have the technology, we have the know-how, we just have to have the political will.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mills.
My rebuttal is simple. If anybody wants to know the truth about how Rick Nolan's been on each side of the issue and trying to walk the tightrope and hedge, just go to Google. Just Google it. The information's out there. The debate's over.
Thank you, gentlemen. We've touched on it in some of your comments, but let's explore it a little further. The Affordable Care Act. It's an important issue that keeps coming up. It has withstood dozens of challenges in Congress. It's withstood scrutiny by the Supreme Court, and it currently is the law of the land. Is it a settled issue? Or in your opinion, where do we go from here? Congressman Nolan?
Well, there's never a final score in politics, so I suspect it's not a settled issue. But I do like the good things that it has done. I have, in fact, probably some of our same friends here, one with Parkinson's disease and another a couple with a child with a brain tumor who were thrilled with the Affordable Care Act because they were protected from bankruptcy and they were able to get affordable insurance to provide for their family. Those are just a couple of the things that the Affordable Care Act has done that I think are most important. Now, is it the final thing? No, I've introduced a number of amendments to make some changes to it, to make it better. And yes, I do support single payer, which is exactly what Medicare is. You know, they administer the Medicare program in this country for about 3 or 4%. The private sector insurance programs administer for about 27%. And that's why, you know, practically a third of all the healthcare dollars that we spend go into administrative costs and profits for big insurance companies. We need to find a way to get universal healthcare that's affordable for everyone in America. There's still 40 million people that don't have insurance in America. This problem is not fixed yet. This thing is not over with. There's still a great deal more that we need to do to make sure a number of things. One is make sure everybody pays. You know, that's kind of a conservative notion, but I embrace that. Make sure that everybody's paying the same rate because that's the fair way to do it. And make sure that everybody's got the fundamental basic coverage. That's what Medicare attempts to do. It does a pretty darn good job. And that's what I propose for the American public. Other nations in this world of ours do it. And guess what? They provide health care for lower costs than what we do, and they get better results in terms of life expectancy, infant mortality, and all the rest. We can do better, and I'm committed to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mills, the Affordable Care Act?
Well, first of all, what cannot continue will not continue. And as what we've seen from the Affordable Care Act so far is that costs have gone up and access has gone down. We have people that are paying higher premiums, higher co-pays, higher deductibles. They're getting less for it. Remember the promises. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. And everybody's going to save $2,500 bucks. Well, that's a lie because it's a bad plan. And it will not work. I am for healthcare reform. Healthcare reform that actually brings down costs and increase access. And I'm also for the goals of the Affordable Care Act, which is making sure that people don't have to worry about pre-existing conditions, lifetime maximums, or if they have a catastrophic health condition, that they don't have to worry about where the care is coming from. However, we have to decide who we are as a people, who we are as a society. Are we a society of social safety nets and legal protections, or are we a welfare state with a government big enough to give us everything, but also big enough to take it away? So we need to strengthen social safety nets such as MSHA, Minnesota Comprehensive Health Association, which due to Obamacare is going to be closing at the end of this year. So we could have looked at that high-risk pool. Was it perfect? No. But could we have made it better? Yes. We could have worked on our social safety nets and legal protections as HIPAA, and then let the free market bring the medical economy, the inflation rate of the medical economy in line with the inflation rate with the rest of the economy. Because we know the free market works, and we know that socialism does not work. So buying and selling insurance across state lines, tort reform, price transparency in the medical economy, and also more utilization of health savings accounts to put the power in the hands of the patient and the consumer. So it should be between the patient, the government, the insurance company, and the doctor. It should be between the patient and the doctor. We have to get back to what we stand as Americans.
Thank you. Mr. Sandman, your thoughts on the Affordable Care Act?
And that's just it, affordable. I'm in for Everybody does need insurance, single payer. But the program that is out there right now does not make it affordable to anyone who is single, maybe living on welfare, maybe having a minimum wage jobs, working at McDonald's. It's not affordable. I don't say we scrap the whole plan, but we definitely take it off the table and we fix the thing. If other countries in the world can do this, why not us? We are driven so much by profit and greed by the corporations, insurance companies, they forget about their people, and that's us. So it needs to be looked at, analyzed, scrutinized, and make it affordable, darn it, affordable.
Thank you. Congressman, rebuttal, if you will.
Well, you know, Mr. Mills now is saying he supports many of the things that are in the Affordable Care Act, but somehow you want to repeal it. Talk about double speak. Starting to, you know, smell like the barn on a warm Sunday afternoon here. The fact is, you know, you keep talking about free market, you keep talking about affordable. Why do you think we had to abandon the free market and establish Medicare? Because people couldn't afford it. That's why. And why do you think we need some changes now? Well, first of all, we got to rebuild the middle class. They can't afford anything with the minimum wages, and you oppose an increase in their minimum wages, and you find it personally offensive that the super rich millionaires and billionaires should have to pay more taxes. You know, I quite frankly find it a little personally offensive that you would want to deny working men and women in this country a living wage. Because then they might be able to afford some health care regardless of whether it was in the private sector or the public sector. But let's not throw these slogans around about socialism and government control and taking over. We're looking for some common sense solutions here to get affordable health care to everybody in America. It's a fundamental right where I come from, and we need to rebuild this middle class so people have some income to afford a lot of things like a home and to afford to feed their children without having to work 2 or 3 jobs. That's what this contest is all about. That's what this choice is all about. It's a question of who you're for.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Mills, I suspect you have a response?
Yeah, how much time? He covered a lot of ground there. First of all, you know, I've always been, he says that it's smelling like the barn, I believe. How I've talked about how I would handle health care reform, I've always been consistent. And again, you know, if that's your accusation, substantiate it without editing my words together out of context. As far as the minimum wage is concerned, those jobs are stepping stone jobs. They're designed for 16 and 17-year-olds to get their first job, to get the skills and the experience they need to get the next paying job that they have. The fact that there aren't jobs after those is a stunning indictment of the failure of the Democrats that have been in control of this economy for the last 6 years. We should be removing those stepping stones. We should be reigniting our economy because, you know, in the Bakken oil fields, nobody's talking about minimum wage. They're talking about jobs and economic prosperity, and things are happening. And the other thing, too, is that, you know, Representative Nolan talked about common sense solutions. I hope that single-payer, government-run health care is not a common sense solution to what we need to do with our health care economy.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Mr. Sandman, would you care to respond?
Well, once again, we got to have it affordable. I talked with some people here about 3-4 weeks ago, and just to make a living, this young man had to work 3 part-time jobs. That is not acceptable in a country like ours. He could not afford to have the insurance. So it needs to really be looked at, analyzed, taken apart, and make it affordable for everyone. No one here in this great state or in the United States should have to work 3 jobs at minimum wage and still suffer. No one. is supposed to be the land of opportunity. I don't see no opportunity there at all.
Thank you very much. Well, we couldn't possibly have this forum without talking about guns, gentlemen. I watch your TV ads, it's like watching the hunting channel. So let's talk about guns, both in the context of the tragedies of mass shootings, but also in the context of protecting and respecting our Second Amendment rights. And Mr. Mills, will begin with you.
Oh, thank you. First of all, we need to enforce the laws that we currently have rather than making up new ones. It doesn't make any sense when the laws that we have right now go unenforced. But also, I'm somebody who will stand up for your Second Amendment rights. Representative Nolan has earned an F rating from the NRA. That's a failing grade from the National Rifle Association. And again, if anybody wants to debate that, they can go to nolanrecord.com and see how he earned that failing grade, or go to the National Rifle Association's websites themselves. It will settle the debate pretty quick. However, he also voted for a national gun registry, the McClory Amendment. He wanted to ban smaller framed handguns back in the 70s, and then he gets back to Washington, D.C., and then he goes on the Sunday morning talk show circuit and starts talking about banning semi-automatic rifles, the ones that look scary to him, and to have the government tell us how many bullets we can have in our gun. You know what? Representative Nolan has more than earned his failing grade, and in Washington, D.C., I will stand up for your Second Amendment rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sandman.
Well, I totally support the Second Amendment as a veteran. I've been trained to use guns, but there needs to be some tweaking with the registration and background checks to keep the psychopaths and crazies, as I would call them, from getting their hands on that. So we need to dig deeper, more into the background checks and not allow the school shootings to happen. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. So that system is failing. So we need to look at that process of registration and background checks for anybody, any type of gun, buying that. And that's a start. But I do support your right to bear arms, everybody's rights to bear arms. But we need to do more background checks. Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman.
Stewart, what I said on CBS Face the Nation is that I don't need an assault rifle to shoot a duck. And I don't. Perhaps you do. You know, maybe you should spend more time at your shooting range. The fact is, right now, you can only have 3 shells in your gun when you're shooting ducks. The fact is, there have been numerous safety measures that have been passed over the years that have not in any way abridged the right of our right to bear arms. That's just the hard, cold fact of life. You kids can't go to school with a machine gun and a grenade launcher. That was outlawed a long time ago. But that doesn't take away our right to bear arms. The right to bear arms, as Skip pointed out, is fundamental. Many of us have taken the oath to safeguard and protect that right. And with regard to the NRA, I'm going to repeat it again. It's been made clear that the NRA is made up primarily of Washington lobbyists in $1,000 suits lobbying for gun manufacturers and the people who sell guns. The NRA guys that I hunt and fish and hang out with, I've seen surveys that show that 3 out of 4 of them support background checks. Do you really want the right to sell guns and arms to people that are convicted violent criminals and terrorists and people who have been found with serious mental illness? Do you want the right to sell guns to those people? What do you have against background checks? Gun safety is one thing. Protecting our Second Amendment rights is another. And I support our Second Amendment rights. I love to hunt, I love to fish, I love to sport shoot, and my wife, quite frankly, we live in a rather remote location, and glad to have some guns around for personal protection.
Thank you. I'd like to remind a few members of our audience to please control themselves. Mr. Mills and Mr. Sandman and Congressman, I'll offer you 1-minute rebuttals, and maybe we could touch on reasonable gun control, which we keep hearing about. Mr. Mills?
Well, first of all, I think it's way over the line to accuse me of wanting to sell guns to criminals and terrorists. We have the NICS background check right now, and again, we should follow the laws we have rather than create new ones. And I believe the exact quote that you used was, "I don't need an assault rifle to shoot a duck, and I think they should be banned." All semi-automatic rifles, that's what we're talking about, work exactly the same way, regardless of how they look. And also, you know what? I don't want the government to tell me I can only have 3 bullets in my gun. So if you want to find out how Rick Nolan earned his failing grade from the National Rifle Association, you can go to the NRA's website or to nolanrecord.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sandman, do you have anything you'd like to add, sir?
Just want to reiterate is that we need the background checks. Everybody in this great country of ours has the right to bear arms. But we need to do something to keep the crazies, the psychopaths, the mentally ill from getting their hands on assault weapons and walking into a school because they had a bad day. We need to do better background checks.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The Congressman has one more minute.
Excuse me, Congressman.
Well, I just want to agree with Mr. Sandman here. And Stewart, you know that they can walk across the street. The people that Mr. Sandman is talking about, that we don't want to have guns, they can walk across the street from your store and go to a gun show and buy all of those guns. And as Mr. Sandman said, and I agree, something needs to be done about that. And I'm sorry that you oppose that, but many of us feel that background checks are important to keep guns out of the hands of murderers and traitors and people who are violently and criminally insane and threatening violence on other people. There's no reasonable civil rationale for not putting together a complete system of background checks to keep guns out of the hands of people with those histories and those kind of inclinations.
I don't believe the United States needs to send our ground troops in. A limited air assault, what they're doing right now, I agree with that, but we need to have Saudi Arabia step up. They have the biggest air force in that region. Let them step up and start putting their troops on grounds. Let their troops face the danger. I'm sick and tired of the United States being called in to be the world's policeman. We need to step back. We need to bring our boys and girls home and let them fight it out over there. Because they have the resources, they have the funding from the United States to do that. And by God, they should step up and save our young men and women, not put their lives in danger. So, you guys know where I stand with that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Congressman.
Well, I've lived in the Middle East, studied the language, studied the culture, done business throughout that region, got a pretty good feel for the people over there. And a couple of things. One, it's very complex. Things are never quite as they appear. But I'll tell you what some of the facts are. We have spent trillions of dollars, precious blood, in this conflict. And either directly or indirectly, we have supplied arms and munitions to just about every single element in that fight over there. We started giving arms to the Mujahideen. They morphed into Al-Qaeda. They're the people who attacked the World Trade Center. We supported Saddam Hussein. We know he used chemical weapons because we gave them to him. Then we decided to overthrow him, and we decided to support the Shiites. And Maliki, Mother would have called him malarkey. We then, after they persecuted the Catholics and the Christians and the Jews and shut down the churches and the synagogues and told them to get out of there or they would kill them, as well as the Sunnis. Then we gave money to the Sunnis. They called it the awakening, so that they could protect themselves against the Shiites. Then we sent arms in directly and overtly and through our allies into Syria, to the al-Nusra, to the al-Sharam, to the Free Syrian Army, who, by the way, are actually the Muslim Brotherhood. Then we were going to attack Assad, and because he was aligned with Hezbollah and with Iran. Now we're going to attack the people who are opposing Assad in alliance with Hezbollah and with Iran and the other radical elements. The point is, no matter how well-intentioned we are, we have given money and arms to everybody on every side of this fight. We can ill afford it. These are monies that are needed here in America for deficit reduction and for rebuilding America. Bring our troops home, get out of this conflict. It is not our fight, it is theirs. They've been in it for thousands of years, and we can ill afford to spend any more money in this conflict.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Mills?
Well, it starts with our failure to get a status of forces agreement with the Iraqi government. We very well could have gotten it. The fact that we prematurely withdrew our troops from Iraq created a vacuum. Into that vacuum was filled up by bad people doing bad things. Al-Qaeda is not on the run. They have not been decimated. What we've done is we've given them a country. We don't have a choice in this one. They have a direct stated intention of attacking Americans, attacking America and American interest abroad. And the current track that we're on is the right track because we need to leverage our air power. We need to work with our allies in the region, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's Turkey. It looks like they're getting interested, and it's right in their interest to make sure that we crush the threat of ISIS, or the Kurdish Peshmerga, partnering with them, or properly vetted, the operative words is properly vetted moderates, making sure that we're able to give them the training and the arms, the logistical support, and the intelligence they need so this particular coalition can be successful at undoing our mistake of creating the vacuum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Mr. Sandman, would you care to respond?
Well, I agree here with Mr. Nolan. We need to stop selling arms to all those people over there. We need to bring our people home. They've been fighting for how many thousands of years? And I don't believe we're doing them any favors by supplying arms to them. We need our boys and young women home. We need to stay out and quit trying to be the world's policeman. We need to take care of what's happening here in the United States.
Thank you, Congressman.
I want to reiterate that we have no friends in this conflict. Inevitably, it's the arms that we send that are used against us. And even if you think it's a good idea, we can ill afford it. It's bankrupting this country, it's bankrupting our nation. Those are monies we not only need to rebuild America, those are monies that we need to protect and take care of the veterans when they come home. We have a sacred obligation to take care of veterans who have served and protected us, to serve and protect them when they come home. And I've been committed to that. And this is why we have to put an end to our involvement in this conflict. All it does is make us a target, and it prolongs the conflict, it exacerbates the violence, and it's a conflict that only the people in the Middle East can resolve among themselves. Everyone has said, if we're going to resolve it, we have to put boots on the ground, we have to be there for another 25, 30, 40 years. Well, America will not be around in another 25, 30 years if we keep spending these billions and billions of dollars in nation building abroad at a time when America's bridges are falling down, our veterans are not being taken care of, and we need to use those monies and those energies for deficit reduction and rebuilding America.
Thank you, Mr. Mills.
Well, there's one thing in there that I agree with, and that's that we have to take care of our veterans. We haven't done a very good job with it in the past, but we have to do a better job. You know, everybody gave some gave all. And it's something that we just as a country have to make that a priority, that if we're going to be sending men and women abroad to fight our wars, we have to take care of them when they come home. But we don't have a choice in this. We can't bury our heads in the sand while there are people being beheaded, Americans being beheaded in the sands of the Middle East. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've all kind of hit on this issue of taxation, so let's talk a little bit about taxation. The one side is tax the rich, rebuild the middle class. Other side charges that you're offering tax breaks to the wealthy, tax breaks to corporations that ship jobs overseas. Honestly, what approach when it comes to taxation best benefits everyday Minnesotans, and which approach more quickly fuels economic upswing? Representative Nolan, can we start with you, please?
Yeah, first of all, if it's not known, it should be known that I spent the last 32 years of my life in business. I built my own business, a sawmill and a pallet factory business. I bought logs from the loggers throughout this district. I delivered pallets to the manufacturers in this district. I know what it's like to build a business from the bottom up and create jobs. I know what it's like to have to meet a payroll. I know what it's like to have to finance a business. I know what it's like to have to comply with a wide range and a myriad of government rules and regulations. And would I like not to have to be obligated to do any of that? Well, yes, of course. But it's necessary. I don't mind telling you, in the sawmill business, before OSHA, there was nobody who could count to 10 on their fingers because they'd lost too many in the saws. In the Brainerd area, I remember when kids were 25 and 30 years old and their life was over for want of a little ventilation because their lungs were full of fiberglass. And now with OSHA, why, guess what? They're still making fiberglass boats and kids are able to retire. So when it comes to taxes, I'm fully supportive of things like investment tax credits for investing in new equipment and new machinery. I'm fully supportive of government programs to facilitate innovation and new business starts and entrepreneurship and new business activities. The Small Business Administration, for example, something we were able to take advantage of in creating our business, which, by the way, my children own that business today, and they're doing very nicely with it, with sawmills in Emily, Minnesota, and Reamer, Minnesota, and a pallet factory, and supplying pallet parts, and they're doing quite well. But if we want to rebuild this middle class, we got to get away from this trickle-down theory, give more money to the super rich and the billionaires. We need to rebuild it from the bottom up. And that's why I disagree so vehemently with you on the need to provide more tax cuts for the super rich and your opposition to increasing the minimum wage. Beyond that, we need tax incentives to stop sending manufacturing overseas and headquarters overseas to escape taxation. It's time that the rich and the powerful who have benefited so much from the greatness of this country step up and start paying their fair share in the same way that working men and women in this country are paying more than their fair share.
Thank you, Congressman. In fairness, we'll give Mr. Mills, Mr. Sandman, a minute and a half here. Or 2.5, excuse me. Mr. Mills?
Oh, thank you. First of all, our tax code is way too complicated. The IRS is way too powerful, and they've been weaponized against the American people. We need a flatter, fair tax code that benefits the middle class. We're talking about one deduction, automatic, above the poverty line. And then we're talking one or two lower rates, and then deductions starting for charitable giving, mortgage interest, and also expenses for education. Not limited to those, but it has to be flatter, fair, it has to be budget neutral, and it has to be so simple you could fill it out on the back of a postcard and send it in, because we need a smaller IRS and a less complicated tax code. But we have to understand the economic engine of our part of Minnesota. Over 80% of all employers are small and medium-sized businesses that are taxed at the personal individual level. They're subchapter S, they're LLCs, they're sole proprietorships, they're partnerships. They pay taxes as individuals. And when they're paying a higher tax rate, 39.6%, And corporate America, Wall Street, is paying 35%, and they have armies of accountants and lawyers and CPAs. You know what? That's the reason why we have disproportionately, one of the reasons why we have disproportionately high unemployment in our part of Minnesota. You know, the numbers, yeah, you know, for the state look good, but when we start picking apart what's happening in the 8th District, the Iron Range has 64% higher unemployment than the rest of the state. Brainerd and Grand Rapids in the last several months have topped out above 10% unemployment. And in Bemidji, yes, the outskirts of Bemidji are part of this district. They have topped out at above in the last several months, 10%. But that's not the real numbers there. We had a much higher rate of employment, participation in the employment market about 6 years ago. Thousands of our friends and neighbors have given up looking for work altogether, and we have underemployment. We have people working 2 or 3 or 4 part-time jobs, and we've talked about that, because they can't find a good paying or a higher paying job that fits their skill levels. And that's indicative of an economy that is not working, that is sputtering in fits and starts. And if we want to make sure our part of Minnesota has a great economy, we have to look at reigniting Main Street business from, again, Main Street up, not from Washington, D.C. or Wall Street on down. And we need to look at getting projects like Sandpiper going and making sure Polymed is going. We know how to do it. We just have to go and do it.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Mr. Sandman, your philosophical approach to taxation?
Well, I agree with Mr. Mills there. The IRS is a big monster out there lurking in the dark waiting to strike. But where I'd start with that, I would start making sure that we get the money out of the corporations. Stop that subsidies. I could be wrong, but last I heard it was like $500 billion a year. Make the corporations start paying their taxes. You know, $4 to $5 billion there. I believe in a strong tax base, but it doesn't need to come from the backs of the middle class. It doesn't need to come that way. We need to start looking at the top. They say the trickle-down effect. It doesn't trickle down at all. It only goes so far. So when you talk about taxes, yeah, we need a flat tax break that is fair for everyone. Everyone, not just the ones at the top. Then we can have some money that we can do some things here in Minnesota. We can redirect that money. If I'm elected, I'll do the best I can to redirect that money. We need to get the money out of government. We need to put it in the pockets of the people. That's you, my friends. That's you. Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman Nolan, one more minute on taxation, if you'd like.
Well, a couple of things. Stewart, a lot of people like to talk about the tax rates of 38% and 35%. Let's talk about reality. Recent tax study here in Minnesota found that the average person making $1 million or more is paying an effective rate of 13%, not 35 or 38%. And the average person making $30,000 to $50,000 a year is paying 31%. So the one who made $1 million's only got $870,000 left to get by on for the year, and the person making $30,000's only got $20,000 left to get by on for the year. Stewart, you made more money with the salary that your family pays you sitting here in an hour and a half than the minimum wage earner will make in a week. One of your fellow employees came up to me, said that he did the math and he found out he'd have to work for your company for 33 years to make what your family pays you in a year. The fact is, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and the tax policies are exacerbating and accelerating that, and in no small part responsible for that. And nobody is for penalizing the rich. On the contrary, we just want the rich and the powerful to pay their fair share, and we reject this trickle-down theory of economics. We support increasing minimum wages and living wages and rebuilding the middle class, because that's how you rebuild the promise of America.
Mr. Mills, I assume you'd want to respond to that?
Well, yes. At the very beginning, Representative Nolan was making a great case for tax reform. But then he started talking about our family's business. And yes, we have been successful. We do make a profit. That's the purpose of business. And you know, whether it is through profit or whether it is through your paycheck, anybody who is in business knows that that's an opportunity to reinvest back in your business, to sustain the jobs you currently have, and to create new ones. And that's our business model. That is Fleet Farm's business model. We work hard, sweat of our brow. Sometimes we have calluses on our hands. They may get a little bit bloody at times, but then at the end of the day, we hope to make a profit and to pay ourselves good wages. But that's an opportunity to reinvest back in our business, and that is our entire business model. Again, we're not publicly traded. There's no venture capital money. There's no private equity money. What we've been able to do is make sure we're able to grow our business off of our own profits and off of our own wages and reinvesting those back in our business, and we make no apologies for it.
Mr. Sandman, any final thoughts on taxation?
We need to do the right thing. We need to do the right thing for the happiness and survival of the middle class. We need to get that money out of those corporations and have them start paying their fair share. Then we can look at funding some of our social programs that are out there. We need to start with the rich and bring it down. We pay enough taxes already. We don't need to burden ourselves with any more. Just having it be fair. Having it be fair for everyone.
Thank you, gentlemen. In respect of our time together this morning, I think we have time for one more question and then we'll go to closing comments. So let's talk about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, all designed to provide for a social safety net, if you will. But most would agree that that net is fraying with each passing year of inaction by Congress. What would you propose be done to begin to address the problems that we know are coming? Mr. Mills?
Well, first of all, actually you set that question up perfectly. A promise made is a promise kept, and we have to keep our promises to our seniors. But also we have to be cognizant of those programs are going to reach insolvency in circa 2034. That's in about 20 years. And after identifying the problem, we have to come together on a bipartisan solution, because we don't need to do to Social Security and Medicaid what the Democrat Party has done to America with Obamacare. It has to be both houses of Congress, both sides of the aisle, putting all options on the table to make sure that we are able to make good on those promises to our seniors. And as far as Medicare is concerned, we have to look at the underlying medical economy. The increase in inflation in the medical economy is killing Medicare. Not only that, we have taken $716 billion, that's billion dollars, out of Medicare to pay for Obamacare. And if anybody thinks that's a phony accounting number, or that somehow that went to benefit Medicare, you can talk to the people in the home health care industry. They've had about $50 billion taken out of the Medicare home health care, and we have seniors that are depending on that. We need to put that $716 billion back into Medicare, because those are real cuts, regardless of what anybody tells you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Mr. Sandman, your thoughts on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid?
We need to put the money back in, but we also need to change that thought that is in Washington, where they consider Social Security an entitlement. We, the workers, built that fund up. And by God, just because they're sitting in Washington, that's our money. That's our money that belongs to us for when we get older. Medicare is the same way. They sound good, but if they're an open door for a bank robber, it's going to bankrupt all of us. So we need to do the right things. We need to put the money back. Social Security is not an entitlement program. And we need to let all our representatives in Washington, the Senate, say, no, enough is enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman Nolan?
Yeah, first of all, I want to reemphasize something Mr. Sandman has just said here, and that is Social Security and Medicare are not entitlements. They are earned benefits that people started paying for the first hour, the first day, the first month that they ever went to work, with the hope and the expectation that they would live long enough someday to enjoy the benefits. And the fact is that nothing has done more to lift more people out of poverty, maybe in the history of the world, than Social Security. Nothing has done more to extend the lives of our senior citizens than having access for all through Medicare, a single-payer system, by the way, Stu. The fact is that Social Security's got a $2 trillion surplus in it. And in the absolute worst case, and that's based on projections, we don't know what it'll actually be, but it's good for 20 or 30 years, and experts, actuaries say that if we just lifted the cap on the amount that people have to pay their Social Security taxes on, and make millionaires and billionaires pay the same rate that working men and women pay, why we would make Social Security secure ad infinitum. And you're talking about keeping all options on the table when your own political party that you choose to caucus with has called for the privatization and turning Social Security over to Wall Street? I will oppose that with all my might and all my strength. And you're talking about, in the same case with Medicare, taking and turning that back over to the insurance companies, where 1/3 of all of our health dollars go into a big insurance company profits and senseless, costly administration. No, 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 no. There are ways that we can reduce health care costs, and there are ways that we can protect Social Security and Medicare without turning Social Security over to Wall Street, and without turning Medicare over to the insurance industry. We had that once upon a time. And if you think costs are bad under the Affordable Care Act, you better go back and read how vastly accelerating the cost of insurance were under the so-called free market system that you embrace. They were much worse. And we've got to fix it, we've got to improve it, we've got to keep moving forward. We have to protect Social Security and Medicare.
Thank you. Mr. Mills, response?
First of all, yes, there have been some Republicans that have advanced different ideas, but those are not me. And so for Representative Nolan to attempt to put words in my mouth because somebody somewhere in the Republican Party advanced one idea, you know what, I can only state what I believe and what I will stand for in Washington.
Well, you're the one who said all options are on the table. They're not for me.
No, that's quite all right. Anyways, can I start over in the time? That was rude, but it's understandable. Okay, basically, I don't want anybody to put words in my mouth because I want to stand for what I stand for and what I will stand for you in Washington, D.C. And I believe in preserving and protecting Social Security and Medicare. But we have to be cognizant of the fact that these programs have a date of insolvency, and we can't just keep kicking the can down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sandman.
Well, I was kind of enjoying the argument here. Wow. You guys are good. We need to, it's not an entitlement program, and people need to realize that in Washington. We need to have that affordable, and all the things we talked about here tonight come back to the middle class people. If I'm elected into the office, I'll do everything I can to keep those costs down, bring that money back, and put it back where it belongs, with you, the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman.
Well, I guess, do I get another minute? What a deal here. I'll go back to what I said before. You've chosen to propose to go to Washington and caucus with the people that want to privatize Social Security and privatize Medicare. And it's one thing to say you want to protect it, but you know, the devils are in the details. And if your idea of protecting it is keeping all options open, including the option of privatizing both, which is what the people that you propose to caucus with, that should be a little disturbing for people who are relying and counting on Social Security and Medicare. And I would just submit, once again, nothing has done more to lift more people out of poverty than Social Security. And nothing has done more to extend the lives and add more life to the lives of our seniors than Medicare. They're two wonderfully good programs, and I have no interest whatsoever in privatizing either one of them, and will do whatever it takes to preserve them as they are. They have never failed to meet an obligation. There's never a year that they haven't produced a profit, and they have done so much good for our seniors that I will do everything in my power to protect them as they are.
Thank you, Congressman. Let's move to closing statements, and I'd ask each of you to limit your comments to 2.5 minutes, and I'd ask the audience to please refrain from applauding until some final thoughts of mine. Mr. Mills, let's start with you, your closing comments.
Well, it's pretty simple. We've heard a lot here today, and the question is, who is better to represent our ideals and our priorities in Washington, D.C.? Somebody who voted with Obama approximately 90% of the time, somebody who is F-rated by the NRA, somebody, we didn't touch on it a whole lot, but somebody who actually voted for an energy tax, a carbon tax, that would strangle the economy of our part of Minnesota. The #1 cost of production, or the and expense in mining, is energy. That carbon tax, that energy tax, would strangle our Iron Range. And the same for timber and the paper industry. A large part of their expenses is energy. That carbon tax, that energy tax, would strangle our paper and timber industries. The Port of Duluth ships about 40% of the tonnage that goes through the Port of Duluth is coal, carbon, energy. That would strangle our part of Minnesota, causing us to pay more at the pump and causing us to pay more in our home energy bills. Somebody who supports the Waters of the U.S. rule, which would cause the EPA to be able to come in and regulate drain tile, ditches, and ponds on our families' farms, or somebody who thinks that Obamacare is a great first step to government-run single-payer health care. So hopefully you've listened carefully. You've listened with open ears, open arms, and open hearts. And I look forward to your vote and representing you in Washington, D.C., because I truly believe, based on what we talked about here, is that I best represent the values and the priorities of this district, and I look forward to going to Washington, D.C. to serve you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sandman, your final thoughts?
I'm a common person, and I use common sense. If I'm elected, I can walk between both parties. I'm not stuck in the party mode, rather it be Republican or Democrat. I care about you and doing the right things, lowering taxes, student debt, jobs, environment. And #1 is environment with me. There's a lot of talk out there that the corporations and the powers that be don't care about the environment or the people. They are fed by greed. They don't care about you. The parties, I believe, don't care about you. It's about control and power. I care about you. I care about your grandchildren and their right to life. When I'm elected, I will make my voice heard. And I'll do the best that I can for you. For you're the ones that put me in power. You're the ones that put me in the office. And your voice will not go unheard. So vote for me, November 4th. Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman Nolan.
Well, again, I want to thank everybody for this opportunity. Thank my opponents here in this race for a spirited debate. It should be pretty clear by this point what the choice is and who you're for. One other little element I'd just like to add to it is, and that is the question of, you know, who can get things done in Washington as well. Independent groups rated yours truly in the upper 10% of people who were able to introduce legislation and effectively get it passed into law. Believe me, as a freshman in a Tea Party Republican dominated House of Representatives, that is no easy task. Time magazine cited my leadership for keeping us out of the war in the Middle East. I sponsored an amendment on the floor of the House to knock $89 billion out of the Afghan Reconstruction Fund. Why? Because we need that money back home for deficit reduction and rebuilding America. That's enough money to finance the state of Minnesota for several years and still fund our schools, our roads, our bridges. I helped write the Farm Bill, I helped write the Water Resources Bill, I sponsored a bill to make it streamline the regulations for manufacturers like Cirrus, creating all kinds of good jobs. I passed legislation to prohibit the presidents, Republican and Democrats, from raiding our Harbor Trust Fund. I passed legislation helping protect the Great Lakes and our Mississippi watershed from the various invasive species that destroy our native fish and aquatic life. I secured 3,000 acres for the Fond du Lac Band of the Chippewa Nation that had been stolen by settlers following the Treaty of 1854. My staff and I have worked with government, private agencies, private non-public to secure well over $300 million in grants for roads, for bridges, for airports, for our harbors, for our schools. The point is, there is a longer list. Mining executives as well as mine workers support my candidacy. Energy executives as well as energy employees support my candidacy. You know where I stand on all these issues. You know who I'm for. I think people just have to ask who they're for, and the decision on who to vote for should be easy.
Thank you. And we'll leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you all for your participation. This morning we appreciate this opportunity to have a discussion on the issues. Chuck, thank you, and partner at the Duluth News Tribune. Thanks to the Civility Project folks. And of course, thanks to the Playhouse for the use of their facilities. Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your day.